Hello, so in the previous episode we have covered using semantic HTML tags in your Ruby on Rails application. And if we think further, then what if we decide to add some kind of styles just on our semantic HTML tags? So instead of adding some kind of classes or styles, we would just go to like application CSS and style our main tag, for example, where we would add a background color that would be like black, and a text color that would be white. And refresh, and you see we are kind of working on a dock theme of our application. But thinking further, what if it was actually a CSS framework that automatically styled our HTML tags? So it would be like a classless CSS framework where you do not apply classes on HTML tags, but instead these HTML tags are styled directly by this framework. So there are such classless CSS frameworks like simplecss.org. Now, if we have a look at what the simplecss.org is, it is just one CSS file that applies different styles on HTML elements. And if we include the simple CSS inside our application layout like this and refresh our page, then you see automatically some styles are applied to our page. Let's just remove these styles that I have added on my own. And here you see we have our header part of our application, we have the navigation links styled, we have the main part of our application, and we have a footer. And it was all styled automatically by us just adding the simple CSS classless CSS framework to our application. It just applied different styles on our HTML tags like main, like header, like nav, like footer. So for the footer it added this borderline. And well, why do I have the active tab not working? Because it's actually not a link. You see I have this link to unless current, so the current tab is just well, it's just some HTML. Anyway, you can work with this later. And you see, if we work with particularly this simple CSS, so on this other browser I have a dock theme, and it automatically styles everything in the dock theme. Here I have a light theme, and it is styled with a light theme. So a classless CSS framework like simple CSS can give you the possibility to add some basic decent looking styling to any application where you're just starting to work and you don't have any expense of time of actually adding CSS and styling your application. If you want to have something just basic, you can have some kind of simple CSS. Actually, you are not limited to this simple CSS. There are other classless CSS frameworks like MVP.css, I guess. Let's see. So there is this MVP CSS, and you can instead try to include this MVP CSS. Let's see how it would look. So going to our application HTML, here I would include MVP.css and remove simple CSS. And how does it look? Well, you see it offers a somewhat different style to your application. And again, it also has a bright theme and a dark theme. But here I'm using section, and it gets the content a bit broken on MVP CSS. So you see using the section HTML tag that I'm using inside our posts is kind of breaking this MVP CSS a bit. Let's try to remove it. You see, now it works. So I like that the section tag doesn't break inside the simple CSS, and that's why, well, one of the few reasons I prefer simple CSS as a default classless CSS framework that I use to create some kind of MVP application without putting any time and efforts into writing CSS. But here you see at the moment simple CSS doesn't actually add any styles to the article tag. So we have our posts object, and here we have our article tag, and if we look into the documentation of simple CSS, well, for documentation we can just open the CSS file and look for article. So the article tag isn't styled, and we can add some styling to our article tag on our own. So let's go to our application CSS. We have the article tag, and let's add something like a border radius. That would be 1 em, then border, padding, that would be 0.5 em, and some kind of border style, that would be solid. Okay, and going back, and let's refresh the page, go to posts, and you see we have some kind of basic styling here. Of course, it's not perfect, but you can always improve it. So, yeah, let's just pad in, okay, like this. And looks better. So you see, without putting any real efforts, we've done some kind of CSS styling to our application by using a classless CSS framework that applies classes on top of HTML elements, so that you don't need to actually write any CSS in your small app.